Hey y'all, welcome back to Red at the Wire. Well, today we're going to be looking at the Stakes Pick 4 for Saturday's card at Belmont, and it does include a couple of good ones, including the Peter Pan and the Man of War. So let's take a look at the sequence. First leg of the Pick 4 is the 5th race at Belmont, and it's the Grade 1 Man of War Stakes. It's run at 1 3/8 on the inner turf, and it's for 4-year-olds and up. And if we look at the configuration, you'll see that they actually can do this around 2 turns. We don't have to add the extra turn like we did at Gulfstream, so that's kind of a perk there. You see there's plenty of stretch to run up to, so tactically there shouldn't be any issues. So let's take a look at the field. Number 1 is Red Knight, the long-distance specialist. Mike Makers just keeps this one rolling along. The Elkhorn last time, he just couldn't quite get to Verstappen. He ran his usual good race at 1.5 miles. That's just his distance. However, in this race, he's going 1 3/8, so he's going to lose a panel, and I think that might impact him a little bit as far as not giving him enough time to get going. This is a pretty deep field, and I think that there's others that appeal a little bit more. So he does get a Rad Ortiz back, which is obviously a plus, but I'm going to look elsewhere this time. Warren Point is pretty logical. I mean, Charlie Appleby, just anything he brings to the States is just lights out, it seems. I think he's 49% in graded stakes, which is just ridiculous, and he's 56% with shippers. So he doesn't bring ones here who can't run. He did lose with Modern Games last time, so he is human. But this one is kind of lightly raced, but I went back and watched the Amir Trophy in Qatar, and it was interesting enough because it was just a weird configuration of the track looking at it camera-wise, so it took a little getting used to. But anyway, this one had all kinds of traffic issues and was covered up on the rail like they like to do. And he had a little trouble getting free and was kind of keen the whole time. But once he got free, he put in a prolonged close, and I think he did really well to get up for second. So I consider that to be a really good effort. If he runs back to that in this race, I think you'd have to make him a very serious contender. So he would be my top pick in here, and he'd be a definite use. Channel Maker is the old venerable 9-year-old, and as I've said before, I've never really liked this horse. I don't know what this. I just don't like him. He's got a really one-paced running style. He runs on the front end, and he just sort of hangs around. That's the way I look at it. So maybe I'm not the best source to talk about him, but I will say this: there isn't a lot of speed in this race, and he could get on the front end. And he tends to need one prior to a layoff. So he is second off the layoff here for Belmont. So it could be a lot worse scenario. Joe Rosario is doing really well at Belmont right now, but he's better with closers than he is with front-running types. And that's kind of a little something in the back of my mind about this one. I think there's others that appeal more, and I'm not going to use this one. Verstappen, we tipped this one out. He ran a big race in the Elkhorn to come out at 16-1, coming off those synthetic efforts. And that Turfway park form really has held off pretty well with horses moving over to other tracks. So good for them. Brendan Walsh has been red hot. He just took down the Oaks. No stopping him from Keeneland, where he started to heat up, and I'll assume his barn is still good to go for now. This one continues to improve as the class level of race increases. So does his own class he's running at, and he's running at a higher class than the races he's in. So that all systems would go from that perspective. The only thing I'm going to say is I don't see a triple-digit buyer in his makeup, and I think you're going to need one to win this race. So the only thing I'm a little concerned about is the top end, and there are other horses who like to run from off the pace in here, so it could get fairly muddled in the back there. So I wouldn't talk anybody out of using them, but I'm going to try to keep we got a spread in some other races in this sequence, so for him, he's kind of a fence for me. 6-1's a decent price. I'd consider using, but I'm just not sure that he's got the top end to win this one. House Street ran kind of against what we thought in the Elkhorn. He tried to stay up near the pace, and Probably made some sense when you consider there wasn't a lot of early speed in that race. But he wasn't able to get the job done in his first effort against Graded Stakes Company. That was a pretty salty group to be running against his first time. So we can kind of give him a pass on that. He has run a mile and 3/8 before, as you can see at Gulfstream, and that optional claimer. So that's a plus. I would think they're going to try to keep him off the pace this time and maybe rate a little bit, maybe try to get a jump on some of the closers. I think his top end is a little light. And again, he's facing a really salty field, so I don't really like him in this spot. Soldier Rising, on the other hand, is pretty intriguing. Christophe Clement is heating up, and he was not doing well at Keeneland, but he has really stepped it up, and you can see he's got a nice record at Belmont. It's really hard to keep this one down. He has got He won a long layoff, a horse coming off a long layoff in a graded stake. He won with Amazing Grace a couple of months ago. And so he's 1 for 5 in the spot, but it does give you an indication that this is a good angle for him and that he'll have this horse ready. I think this one has the top end to compete. I think you're going to get a price. I think they'll be looking at Red Knight and with the Prada Board. So if this one can fire back to some of the prior efforts, I think this one has a really good shot. And it's going to be kind of under the radar because he's not as high profile as some of the other horses in here. So I like this one, and I think I'm going to use him. Strong Tide, I consider to be a pace factor only. Just doesn't have the top end to compete with these. This is more of he seems more of like a grade 3 type of horse, and this is absolutely a grade 1. I don't see him taking this field from wire to wire. So despite the presence of Florent Giroux, I'm going to pass and pace presence only. Value Engineering, he's another venerable one. This is his spot, he's running long distances, and you can see 2 back, he had a mile and 3/8. He won the McDermott in a pretty nice effort. However, last time in the Elkhorn, he was nowhere to be found. And wouldn't put it past Mike Maker to have this one reared up and ready to go again for this one. But kind of in keeping with my theme, I think his top end is a little light here. And I think there's others I would rather use than him because, again, we can't use too many in this race because I think it's almost likely a single with Warren Point. And I think this one's a little off form right now, so I'm going to pass on Value Engineering. The second leg of the pick 4 is the 6th race at Belmont. It's the Grade 3 Peter Pan Stakes. This is a prep for the Belmont. It's running a mile and 1/8 for 3-year-olds. And one of the interesting things is, if you look to the right, that this is run around 1 turn. It's the only track in America where you can get a mile and 1/8 around 1 turn. So obviously, maybe the speed has a little bit of an edge, and maybe you can. There's some horses that maybe couldn't do it around 2 turns, maybe have a better shot at getting the distance this way. So it's a little something to think about. We take a look at number 1, Arcangelo, and this one ran broke his maiden in a pretty good fashion in a 1-turn mile at Gulfstream, and had a lot of run in the gallop out afterwards, which leads me to believe that the distance isn't going to be a problem, be it by Arrogate, it shouldn't be. I do have to wonder about the stepping into winner's company at a graded stakes race is if that's not asking a little too much. You do see some steady improvement, but I think another big leap forward would be needed here. So I'm not. There's some things to like here, but at a 10-1, that's pretty good value. But I probably want to wait one here. Slip Mahoney was on the Derby Trail, and we saw this one didn't have so great a Wood Memorial, but did encounter a fair amount of traffic. So we can maybe give him a pass on that one. If we go back to the Gotham, which was a 1-turn race as well, he had a better effort, I guess you could say. I mean, he had a tough trip in that one as well, and but he did close pretty well to get second, albeit pretty far behind to raised Cane, who didn't do so hot in the Derby. You kind of look at it, it's kind of interesting. You look at this one's form, and it's kind of the tale of two cities. Sometimes this one comes from way off the pace. Sometimes this one is right up on the pace. So it's hard to know which horse is going to show up here. But seeing as how this is the other entry for Brad Cox, he's also got Bishop's Bay in this race, who is probably a little better prospect. You wonder if maybe they're going to try to get this one up on the lead a little bit, or maybe try to block a little bit for Bishop's Bay. I'm not sure. 4-1, I don't know. I kind of go on the fence a little bit about this one. The one thing you can say a lot of times is when you have horses who find trouble and they do it consistently, like in 2 straight races, they're like Zandon last year in the Derby. They just always find trouble and find reasons not to have a good race. So I'm kind of on the fence with this one. No, I wouldn't talk you out of using. Game Change is a Shug McGahee trainee for Joseph Allen stable, and you got Jose Ortiz aboard. Really nice connections. And this one was Triple Crown nominated, but obviously there were some issues and then delayed. Broke the maiden at Gulfstream around 2 turns, but really didn't follow it up very well against winners for the first time, and I'm sure that's why this one has been in a little bit of a layoff. If you draw a line through that last race, I probably wouldn't be terribly excited about this one. Seems to cut below right now. If anybody could get a horse to excel, to be a contender in this race, given this prior performances, it would be Shug McGahee. But I think 20-1 is probably realistic for this one's chances, and I don't think I'd use. Summer Cause is a really interesting horse. Trained by Christophe Clement, and as we noted in the last race, his barn has really picked things up. And he's got Manny Franco aboard for this one. That Federico Tessio was one hell of a race. The horse that won it, Perform, who's nominated for the Preakness, I believe, ran one of the greatest rides you'll ever see a jockey give a horse. It was just unbelievable. But Summer Cause didn't do bad in this race either. And you note the red numbers there, that indicates the time form pace ratings. So there was some pretty hot pace going on there. And this one was able to stick around in it and ended up 3rd and was actually closing into it a little bit. So if you look at that, that's a pretty solid effort. And another jump forward maybe gets this one in the mix. I'm not sure this one is a win candidate per se, but I think this one's definitely headed in the right direction. And at 10-1 is some pretty interesting value, and I would consider using. Classic Catch is trained by Todd Pletcher, and you got a Rod Ortiz, so they need business. Those are awesome connections, as we know. You see at the Wood Memorial, this one was kind of, sort of making his way slowly, and really, I don't know that he was real serious about the Derby. But I think they looked at the Wood Memorial Field and, they threw him in and said, why not? Let's see what he can do. He had a lot of problems in the Wood Memorial, and he closed into what was a fairly slow pace, and he actually gave a pretty good effort. If he's that far back in this race, I think he probably would have more than likely the same result, because at a 1 turn and 1 1/8, you have to believe the horses up on the engine or near it are going to have an advantage over late runners. So this one has run a little closer to the pace in the last couple of races, but those last couple of races really don't they don't make your eyes pop out. I mean, they were kind of okay. And you see some horses we've seen before, like Prairie Hawk and Groveland and Croupy, but none of them really factored out too much. And so, this one, I'm kind of, this seems like a Pletcher JV horse to me. And, you can use them, but 9-2, I got to have, I think there's horses in here you can maybe find some better prices on. Gold Soldier Gold is a total wild card, of course, because this one really hasn't run in the States. Has been doing all the running in overseas in the UAE. In the UAE, Derby had a pretty decent effort. We all were spellbound by Dermot Sotogake, so we probably missed it. But if you go back and look at it, this one closed into a speed-favoring track and did manage to get up in 5th. So it wasn't that bad an effort. And so, it's had a little time to decompress. And one thing I'll say that really strikes out at me, Tappets love Belmont. He is the Belmont sire. So at 8-1, this is a bit of a wild card, but I think you use, because none of these look like real world beaters to me. So I think you take a flyer on this one, and if it's a true Tappet, it's going to like Belmont, and what the hell, you probably get a good price. Asmodeus, trained by Bill Morey, good trainer, and you see this one just broke his maiden, but 2 back, he did run a really big race. And that was after stumbling at the start of the 1-turn mile at Aqueduct. This is a 1-turn race. Normally, I'd say if it was a 1 1/8, and it'd be 2 turns, and that'd be a big test. But this is only 1 turn, so you can get a lot of horses who might be out of this race can stay in it. And if this one runs back to that 93, this one could probably factor. I'm a little reticent to use a horse who's first against winners, though, in a graded stake. And that probably would keep me from using this one. But again, another one that I wouldn't talk you out of it in a fairly wide open affair. Henry Q, we last saw in the Sunland Derby, and he was part of that ridiculously fast pace early. And I almost get the feeling that Todd Fincher thought he's just so much better than the rest of the horses in this race. We can just get on the lead and he'll walk home. And what did not happen. I mean, the pace was just ridiculously fast. And he folded under it. He was doing all the heavy lifting early with it wasn't low expectations, but there was another speed. Wild on Ice was up there with it, but there was another horse as well. Needless to say, he wilted under it. Not going to get that type of pace scenario here, and it's a 1-turn race. So those are a couple things that maybe bring him back into contention. The big issue more than anything is the class level, or the level of competition he's been running against hasn't been very much out in New Mexico. So we don't really know if those numbers are really serious or not yet. He did have some races at Santa Anita, but you notice those were at the optional claiming level for a maiden, and didn't break it right away. So there's a couple of questions about this one. I think he's got some talent, and you're going to get him at 8-1. And if he runs back to that 93, which was pretty much a cakewalk, maybe he can factor in this race. But it's iffy to me. But I will say one other thing is that Doug O'Neill is awfully dangerous in spots like this when he's under the radar. So a little something to think about. Bishop's Bay will likely be the short price. He's the morning line. He's the 8-5 favorite. And having watched those 2 races at Fairgrounds this winter, nobody would be surprised that he's the short price favorite. Brad Cox, Florent Giroux. He's got Uncle Mo on top, Pioneer now on the bottom. So this one, there's only a couple of things that I'm a little concerned about with this horse. Is he a deserving favorite in this race? I think so. I mean, Beyer-wise, he certainly matches up with or exceeds the other horses in this race. But here's a couple of things to think about. Number one, he has not improved his class level, meaning the level that he's running at has stayed the same for his maiden and that second optional claimer. So he came out of the gates, ran a really solid maiden, but you see a dip in the Beyers. Now, he was going around 2 turns, so cut him a little slack. But look at those blue pace numbers. Slow both times, including the 6 furlong race. And he won both of those up on the front end. And, he beat First Mission. That's the thing everybody's going to point to. And that's absolutely true. Yes, he did. But it's obvious that First Mission is perhaps on a better arc and is improving a little faster than Bishop's Bay is. So that said, is he a use? Yes, I think you have to. But I don't think he's a lock. And this is why I think you want to maybe find some value on the ticket as well. So, I mean, this is not a case of, Cox lately hasn't really been firing that great. You see what Wet Paint did in the Oaks or Botanical, and they were two of the shorter prices. And barns have lulls, and this might be one of them. I mean, he's a great trainer, but if the horse isn't showing an upward progression, then he can be beat. And so this is a case where if you want to try to take a stab against Bishop's Bay, I wouldn't blame you. Look at the pick 4 is the 7th at Belmont, and it's a maiden claimer for state breds, 3-year-olds and up on turf at a mile and a 16th. And if you look at the configuration, you see they run this on the outer turf course, and consequently it's coming out of a chute where it's more of a turn and a half than it is 2 turns. So horses to the inside will probably have tactically a little bit of an advantage. Moreover, there's horses that where the distance, if it was a little bit of a limitation, they can probably carry their speed a little farther because they don't have 2 full turns to travel under. So a couple things to think about. Waffle number 1 is trained by David Donkin, who's been kind of, I think his barn's going pretty well right now. He got another win today, and I think he's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. So this is one that we want to take seriously. He's not the greatest first-time starter trainer, but he's okay. The dam for Temple City's a decent first-time turf sire. Not great, not bad. But I always like to look at the dam for these. And the dam here is Honoria is 1 for 2 with firsters, 3 to 5 with 3-year-olds, and 20% with turf roots. So I think this one's a really good fit in this spot. And at 12 to 1, I think you get a pretty nice price. The tab looks good. All systems go. Why not throw in the mix? Barry the Builder is getting a debut at 3 years old after, kind of a checkered 2-year-old season. Did okay on turf, knocking on the door a couple of times. And we'll just draw a line through that dirt effort, both dirt efforts, really, because obviously this one likes turf a little better. Debuting at 3, anything's possible. Rudy Rodriguez is 1 for 3 in this spot with 3-year-olds against older. So he's had some success in that regard. Got Javier Castellano aboard, so I think there's some pretty good expectations. 6 to 1 is a pretty good price. I think this one's a logical use. Miracle Mike is Todd Pletcher, and this one's first time for a tag. That's automatically a red flag with Todd Pletcher. He puts Jose Ortiz aboard, and I think this one's dressed up, particularly since won at the Ocala Breeders' Sale for $105,000, and now they're ready to get rid of this one for $40,000. So I think they've pretty much thrown in the towel, it looks like to me. The first effort this one had over dirt in the slop at Belmont was pretty good, but nothing's really gone right since. And so the moving to turf seems a little desperate to me. Golden Sense is more of a sprint sire than he is 2 turns. But as we mentioned, because this is a turn and a half, maybe they'll be a little easier for this one to get the distance. 4 to 1 in this race is, anybody who's short priced is an underlay. So, I mean, do you have to use this one? Yeah. I mean, Pletcher's 26%. 68% in the money in this spot with a 238 ROI. So they do win, but they can also go the wrong way too. So you have to be advised. But I think this is one in this field you have to include. Your Mission is the favorite in this field, and you got Rod Ortiz aboard, and there's the reason right there. This one has a buyer edge over most of the horses in this field. Particularly, you go back to that effort in July at Saratoga. It's got a 68, and that would probably win this race. We'll draw a line through that dirt effort in January at Aqueduct. I mean, it was in the slop, and obviously turf is the better surface for this one. Has already run at the claiming ranks once, so there's no real big red flags there. I think you have to include this one just on the numbers. This one fits, so this is a use. Fluorescent Bay, don't really know much about Robbie Davis. Creative Cause is okay as a turf sire, being my Giants Causeway. They're gonna like the grass. The first effort on dirt wasn't anything to write home about, and really didn't factor a whole lot. If I knew a little more about this trainer, I could probably give a more positive opinion. But this one would have to make a pretty big spike up to factor in this race. And if you consider to be going from sprint to route and turf or dirt to turf, That's a lot of firsts for a horse, and at 30-1, I mean, maybe if you like the price, throw in for the hell of it, but I don't think this one's likely to factor. Academy Choice is interesting because he's by Oscar Performance. Oscar Performance gets 21% of first-time turf. He's a really good first-time turf sire. The dam, however, is a little mixed as far as the class goes. Liza Lou, she's 1 for 8 with her firsters, so that's pretty good. But she's 5% with turf routes, so she doesn't necessarily get 2-turn horses. However, in this race, you're looking for an edge, and this one might be the case here with a horse who's got a sire who's really good first-time turf. This one didn't do too bad on dirt the first time. I mean, I guess you could say compared to some of the other efforts in here. Obviously, turf is going to be a big step up for this one, particularly when you consider the sire. So at 20-1, I think you got to use this one for sure. Tunnel Vision, trained by Mike Maker. He's not the greatest first-time turf sire, 8%, and with 3-year-olds versus older, so in the mix. But you do get Lasix for the first time, so that's a little bit of a plus. Roddy Valenti's outfit is a pretty good one, and you get Florent Giroux, so maybe Mike's got some ideas that this one might be better on grass. The dirt efforts really haven't been so hot, but you do see some buyers there. If there's a step up that generally happens when a horse moves to turf, that would put this one right in the mix. And at 8-1, I think you got to use. Silent Running, this is Jimmy Bond is a Saratoga trainer, and that's where he loves to do most of his damage. But this would be kind of a primer for that, the Belmont Spring Meet. Got Flavian Prada Board, and this one's coming off a long layoff. You see the buyers that definitely would make him a serious win candidate here. It particularly has been competitive at the maiden special weight level as opposed to maiden claiming. You'll draw a line through that last one because it was in the slop on dirt at a sprint. That's not what this one wants to do, obviously. So I think this is a logical use, particularly since this one likes to run on the front end. There isn't a lot of early speed. And when you do have a field like this, horses can very easily wire the field. So you use Silent Running. Michael Lease is another Mike Maker charge. I can't be high on this one at all. There's just no form. Had one effort on turf already at the maiden special weight level, but it wasn't anything to write home about. I mean, getting a 14 dirt or turf is not inspiring. So I think I'll wait one with this one and concentrate on Tunnel Vision. War Prince is trained by Rob Actress, and he's more of a dirt claiming trainer, but this one did run on turf for the debut, so didn't really do terribly well. Did okay, I guess, for a first time effort, and but went on dirt and really did a little better, I guess you could say, but didn't light the world on fire. So maybe the switch back to turf is a better thing. It is second off the layoff, which is a pretty good angle. And dirt to turf isn't a bad one either. But, anytime you get a horse that's doing a lot of things, at a lot of changes all at once, sprint to route, turf to dirt, so on and so forth, then I don't know that it improves the horse's chances to factor. However, with a spike up, now that in the 3-year-old campaign going back to turf, I think that's possible. And this in this race again, you got a spread, so this is one you maybe want to think about using. Eternal Glory is another one going to turf for the first time. Candy Ride is an okay first-time turf sire. The one thing I'll say he does get the bug. You get Jason Huayas, so. You get a little bit of an edge there, but aside from that, you need a pretty big spike up to factor. The main thing that bothers me is this horse really hasn't shown any type of competitive spirit more than anything else. It's just been up the track in all his races. So even if it goes to turf, I can't imagine that that's going to change that around terribly much. So I would probably not use this one. Fast Study is trained by Dominic Schettino, who's kind of hit or miss. He's a pretty good trainer, sometimes not. This is another one moving to turf for the first time, and you see the dirt efforts really haven't been terribly hot. So a welcome switch, I suppose. Coming off a decent layoff and then not really a good angle for Dominic. And he's okay with first time on turf. But again, this is one sprint to route, dirt to turf, long layoff thrown in there. There's a lot of changes here. So 20-1 if you want to use. I wouldn't talk you out of it. It's hard not to use the entire field. It's really tempting to push the all button on this one. We do have some also eligibles. Mama Bann Me I think is a good bet. Trained by Tom Morley, coming second off the layoff, and had a pretty good effort with the switch to turf. Switch back to turf rather in the last race, and I think it's logical this one would move forward. So I think this, if he gets in, you would use. Metamorphosis, another one trained by Bruce Levine, moving back to turf is definitely a positive. This one's improved form. However, not so sure another move forward is likely, but it's possible. If you like, use. 15-1, that's a pretty good price in this field. Cambolito, I didn't see. PJ Quick is another one that sometimes he's pretty good, sometimes not. At Belmont or Saratoga. Made a pretty good effort the first time on turf, I guess you could say. But it wasn't at the maiden special weight level. It was the maiden claiming level. So this is still staying in class. A big move forward, I don't know. I think it's highly unlikely, and I probably wouldn't use this one. Same thing for forward cast. You do see some progression here from dirt to turf. But again, maiden claiming, pretty much the same story as the 15. They're both 30-1. So we got plenty of overlays or underlays, depending on how you look at it in this race. So as good as any, basically you can throw darts in this race and be okay. The last leg of the Pick 4 is the 8th race at Belmont, and it's allowance N1X and for non-winners of 2 lifetime. State breds, 3-year-olds and up, and it's run on the inner turf at 6 furlongs. Number 1 is Feathers Road. Feathers Road took forever and a day to break his maiden, but did so with was competitive in all the races. Kind of interested to see why it took quite so long to break the maiden, given the fact that this horse is ultra consistent. The last race, I'm going to guess, probably needed one. Didn't have much to offer in the stretch, but probably will be right on track. New and Linda Rice in this one, so you do get blinkers as well. So I think this is one 8-1 is one maybe you can think about using. Anne Henry is trained by Michelle Nevin, who's a hot barn right now. You can see she's won 2 of her first 3. And this one's coming off a long layoff and was very competitive in the class. You can see very consistent, staying in the 80s mostly, and in the money quite often. So I think this one is a really logical fit, and you definitely would want to use, particularly when you consider the barn is really hot right now. Power Attack, to me, looks like one that's they had high hopes for early and just hasn't really panned out. This was all at 2 years old, of course, so anything's possible. But the last race was not very encouraging to end his 2-year-old campaign. Granted, was running against Nagarok and Gaslight Dancer, and Vacation Dance came back to 1 the next time. Also, this one faced Web Slinger, and the turf division for 3-year-olds is pretty good this year. So we can forgive a little bit along those lines. You do see a little bit of steady improvement prior to the futurity effort. So there's some things to like here. You're coming off a long layoff, which isn't really a very good angle for Kent Sweezy. He's 0 for that angle. So maybe you want to wait one on this horse, and that's likely what I would do, even with the presence of Joel Rosario. King Moonracer is trained by George Weaver, and he is 24% and 52% in the money with a 383 ROI in long layoffs. So this is a really solid angle for a horse, again, who is has been consistent and pretty competitive at turf and turf sprints. So there's some things to like, and you're getting a debut at 5 after a long layoff, so it's likely this one's going to run a pretty good effort. Not sure the top end is going to win this, for this horse, but I think it is a good place. And you got Castellano aboard, who's had some decent success with this one, a lot of in-the-money finishes. So maybe under is a better bet with this one, but I think it's going to run a good race. Sandrone, I like this horse. Jimmy Bond, another Jimmy Bond trainee. The last race, that N1X effort for debuting at 3 was great for a couple of reasons. Number one, or 4, I'm sorry. This one paired his career high buyer to start the 4-year-old campaign. You always want to see that. That means another move forward is very much likely. You also see that this one was on the front end for the majority of that race and really fought on well and looked like it had a ton of energy and was really game. And I thought those were all extremely positive things to see for a horse coming off the bench. So I really like Sandrone in this spot, and I think he's a definite use and a win candidate. Hey, Mac, it's Jack. I was trained by John Kimmel, who's kind of an under-the-radar trainer, and I like him. He's Saratoga. Every once in a while, he throws in a bomb. He got a rat Ortiz for this one, and the last race was a pretty good effort in the starter allowance. Had some traffic issues, and so maybe with a clean trip this time, would have a better effort. The only thing you got to worry about is this horse ran close to the career high buyer and had a really solid effort and then went to the bench for a freshening. And that always is a bit of a concern for me. I wonder about that. Usually the horse comes back their next effort. Sometimes it isn't so great. So this one at 3-1 is a little shaky to me, but it's definitely a class fit, and I certainly wouldn't talk you out of using this one. 26 Black I think, is really intriguing in this spot. Just broke his maiden. That's true. And he's 3 years old, facing older for the first time. That's also true. But it is coming off a really solid effort. This horse had all kinds of traffic in the stretch, and when finally broke free, just powered right by to get the win, and had plenty in the tank in the gallop out afterwards. So I mean, this horse is live, in my opinion. Is going to have to do better on the buyer scale, but I think it's highly likely that this one is sitting on another big one, and I think you want to definitely use at 4-1. You can keep anything near there. I think that's a good price. Cam Duke, don't see it. Can't say anything more. The last effort was okay at the option 50 level, I guess you could say, but it just was outkicked in the stretch, and buyers look a little light to be competing at this field. So I others appeal more. I just don't get a really good vibe about this one. Starquist, on the other hand, is the other John Kimmel in the race, and I thought ran a pretty good race last time, and that was around 2 turns. So you're getting the cutback from route to sprint, which I always love, and John Kimmel's very good in turf sprints. So at 3 years old, excuse me, having made the turf debut, and I think showed that it's definitely the right thing to do. Gunning back to a sprint, and I think this one kind of under the radar might be one you want to think about at 10-1. And if there's any pace, if this one stays off of it a little bit, we'll definitely have the stamina to power home. We also, this is main track only. I have every indication that they're going to run this one on the turf, so we won't even worry about it. But this race requires, I think, you can spread in this one a little bit, but I think it's a lot more well defined than the one previous. Okay, so here's what our ticket looks like for the pick 4. In the Man of War in the 5th race, we're going to use the 2 Warren Point and the 6 Soldier Rising to offset a little bit. I wouldn't blame you if you want to single the 2. I think that's a good bet. In the 6th race, we're going to use the 6, 8, 9 in the Peter Pan. I think Bishop's Bay is a little vulnerable, so we want to have a couple of alternatives. And we'll throw that Gold Soldier Gold in there as kind of a wild card, so we get some nice value if we're right. In the 7th race, it's a complete crapshoot. You can throw darts and hit any of them, and it's just one of those races. So we're going to spread as much as we can while keeping our ticket size decent. So we're going to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10. And in the 8th race, we'll come back down to earth a little bit, and we're going to use the 2, 7, and 9. So that's a total of 2 times 3 is 6 times 8 is 48 times 3 is 144. It's a 50-cent base. It's a $72 ticket. And I think that gives us a fairly good chance to take it down. Well, that's a wild sequence, that's for sure. That 7th race shouldn't be wished on anybody, boy. I mean, you could literally push the all button very easily in that race. And but I always like to think about ticket size, and I have a real aversion to going that deep in any race. I think Bishop's Bay is very beatable in the Peter Pan, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes down. Cox's barn has been a little vulnerable lately, you know, didn't take the Derby down, didn't take the Oaks down, and we all thought that he was a shoo-in to do it. So barn's a little bit of a lull right now. This wouldn't surprise me at all. You got to wonder why Bishop's Bay wasn't in the Preakness. That's something I've been thinking about, you know, so we'll see. But if we can get lucky and catch fire in that race, then we've got some really good options late. So that's why we spread. We're going to have more from Belmont over the course of the meet. Every day they run races, we'll have some kind of sequence to take a look at. And we'll have the Preakness analysis coming very shortly, and just waiting on a couple of things to come in. But I think you're going to enjoy that. We'll do it just like we did in the Derby, 4 parts, form, class, speed, and pace, and then we'll wrap it all up. And hopefully we're not going to have all the scratches and roulette wheel kind of stuff that made my life a living hell going into the Derby. So we'll hope for that. A little normalcy would be good for all of us, I think. If you do like what you see here, of course, please like and subscribe. And we do thank you so much for coming by. I'll be talking to you real soon. And until I do, be well.